Alright, good morning everyone. Hope you guys are having a fantastic. We are back with some more Total War Napoleon with the War 1 mod. I'm very well, thank you, Forgotten Noble. Um, had a fire pit, not last night, but a couple nights ago, so that was nice. Um, hope you had a good Mother's Day with your mother. Now, when last we left off, we left it to end the turn. I don't remember what we were doing because I didn't leave myself a note, which is handy. Um, I do remember that we did just lose the battle against Great Britain up in the Eastern Front. Nice. Which Total War are you playing today? As Netherlands towards my borders declared war on Warhammer 2. Nice. I would stream that, but it doesn't. My computer is not good enough to stream that. Unfortunately, it's a pretty good game though. I really like it. I do wish the Total War team would do a Warhammer 40k Total War, or something like that. But alas. Alas, I can. Or, still hoping for Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. I think Lord of the Rings would be really cool. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Game of Thrones, so there's that. But um, yeah, it would be really cool to see a Lord of the Rings one. I would definitely play that a lot. Alright, so we're pretty much set for Champagne to not cause us any issues. I'm pretty confident that they're just going to focus keeping their forces amassed there. Seems that may speak properly. Machine gun. This army. Up north a bit. Any machine gun bunkers. Gold. Can't do anything with that as of yet. Get a village. And end turn. What faction are you playing in Warhammer? My mouth still tastes like toothpaste, apparently. Austria-Hungary is being quite useless as an ally. We're going to refuse their offer of. That'll throw them off. Spain. France is probably just going to attack us. No, no. red drink. Cherry, apparently. Sure. Try and see. Oh, that was not what I wanted. Expected. Oh. Have them pull back. That army there. So we've got Cleves pretty well defended. They've still got those machine gun bunkers being readied. Out in the east front, we're gonna keep needing to move these guys up. Recruitment. I think we're going to upgrade our industrial center, which kind of leaves SOL and everything else. Gas war. Not too happy about that, but I do feel that at this point it is kind of necessary. Which is unfortunate, but I would rather have it not have it not need it than need it and not have it. Alright, that was... I probably should have just made juice instead of drinking a juice box, because that was truly nasty. Not something I'm looking forward to. One of my favorite... Yeah. I mean, not often used in reference to gas mortar, but... Yeah. Not gonna make light of that subject. What's interesting is in the First World War, it was France that actually first used gas warfare, which is quite strange to me. Not aware of that. Northerly, we're going to have to go north and then around into the Holland region of the Netherlands. Machine gun emplacement, and then guns, field guns, and machine guns. And Eastern Front, we're going to move here. Not expecting a approachment of the English. I'm playing the Empire and Legendary if you're still... Oh, nice! The Empire is a fun faction. Rumor has it that, well, I mean, I guess I know this, but since they've switched from Fantasy to Age of Sigmar or Games Workshop has done that, the Empire isn't, I was in a battle and there's had to type moments. Yeah, that's fair. I have a distinct advantage in replying to questions and things. Counter offer. Ah, I see. I don't like that in this you can't, as a response, ask for someone to become a protectorate. I guess I need to close my computer thing. Yes. I'm just gonna leave it. I did have to turn the desktop audio down because last night I just about blew my eardrums out when artillery shell hit. And yeah, I figure my ability to hear is somewhat important. It's a lot of men that they're positioning there. Not sure I'm comfortable with that. We're gonna retreat. Of all the ways you could have retreated. But we're gonna have to fight that one. Do you favor Napoleon Empire over the other Total War games? I have Total War Rome. It's not like it's hard to play having played the other ones. I do like Total War Napoleon, but that's because it has the World War I mod, and World War I is an interesting period of history to me, so I like that. And Shogun 2 is it's pretty good. I like it. I like the setting. But I do think that the two Warhammer games, while having obvious Warhammer and Warhammer 2 have obvious flaws, but I still think that they're pretty good. So I would say that this and the Warhammer one are my favorites. A long-winded explanation for a easy question to answer. Alright, we're gonna hopefully use the hill to our advantage.
Damn this weather, sir. Wet powder makes misfires a
certainty. This game. Yeah, the reason I don't like playing Rome 1 is just because of, you know, the graphics have progressed so much since then that it's just difficult to play, I guess. Be a way of putting it for me. I also don't like that the keyboard commands didn't exist yet, so it's just confusing. Right. See how they positioned themselves. Oh, they've got their mortars and stuff in trees. I mean, I can see them, which is nice, but I don't think I'm going to be able to hit it with my artillery super well. But that does mean that they're going to have some trouble shooting out of the trees. He says as they flawlessly shoot out of the trees. Or I could just hit really well, apparently. I'm fine with that. If I win this, it will be very close. For sure. My units have yet to be hit with artillery, so that's nice. Not sure where that hit. Didn't sound like it hit them, so... What else do they? Oh no, just two pieces of artillery. Their Napoleonic mortars can't move, to my knowledge, so... I'm pretty safe up on that hill. Guess I could shoot at some of their troops rather than their artillery, since the artillery isn't going to be super effective. I don't feel that it would be effective with trees. Their general is, running low on troops, so they're going to be walking into uphill into a wall of gunfire. So hopefully no, I should the choices. We're gonna have to focus on their artillery.
We have killed their general, sir. Now they must break.
Perfect. The men aren't really getting out of their trenches, which is good. Not entirely sure what I'm shooting at, but I am certainly bombing that forest. But we're gonna have to switch to their actual proper units. That's a lot of them approaching. At least they're missing once in a while. Alright, and we've got trenches at our face, so they're going to be shooting uphill into a defended position. While under artillery fire in some cases. I haven't hit any of their troops, but what are you firing at? Maybe fire at them. The PALS Battalion. I don't remember why they were called that, but I know there was a really good reason for it. Come on. There we go. So, we're being somewhat efficient in our, or somewhat effective in our, shots. That being said, one of our units is a little too far back, it seems. Run. Hopefully our artillery can be a little more useful since they've helpfully bunched up for it. We have caused some units to run, which is nice. Their general is dead, so not even close. Alright, these guys are gonna have to move to reinforce. Come on, artillery. Come on, we need you to fire. Oh, goodness. And they're so close, too. Oh, now they're falling back a little bit. That's good. Alright, target them specifically, because they're sort of in the middle. Give us at least a bit more chance to hit something. We're way overshooting everything. Alright, so we've dealt with them. Run to there. You run to there. Actually, maybe you should run there. Stay where you are, please. Focus the 11th Regiment. Or you can just way overshoot. That would work too. Actually, that's good enough. You there as well. Oh, goodness. Fire at the mortars. It'll work. I think we're gonna win this. This is a shock.
Sir! Sir! Our general is under attack!
Yes, I know our general's under attack. Fine. Oh! We lost a cannon. Where's that artillery? We gotta fire back. This does not bode well. Alright, we're gonna have to charge into there. Gonna charge into their artillery, unfortunately. Can't take it out while it's in the trees, it seems. It doesn't look like any of their units are coming back, so... Well, I'm gonna leave some... Actually, I'm only gonna leave one unit there. Everyone else can charge into there to try and take that out. Give them a bit of a distraction, and they're genuinely hard to target just because of where they are. Alright, let's get them behind the trench. Concerned friends routing, so I've kind of got them in a state of everyone running away, which is nice. Charge their howitzers with bayonets. Continue running to do so. And they're even moving up. They unlimbering? Yes.
Close to range!
Do not let them get that gun down. Oh, thank goodness. They've gotten rid of their guns. I pushed back the British.
Wir sind die Herren der Meere!
Oh, they took over a city, but we'll take it back. Pilot at Brandenburg. Oops. To there. They're just gonna take out the very few left victory. And we're gonna just auto-resolve because I don't think peacefully occupy. There, and armed, damaged at all. So we've pushed back the British Navy earlier. We pushed back the at their land troops. So we're gonna towards the Netherlands. We're gonna fight that because the AI will make it so that I lose troops if I just auto-resolve it. This is a battle between Leon Holscher. Sorry, that is my general. Sander von Oss is the defender. I will be firing downhill into trees, it appears, so I'm going to put myself as high on the hill as I can. And let them... It's many is the turn sequence time? Yes. The turns are massive in that. Woo! Not entirely sure what that noise was, but... Ready then. Yeah, the turns are unnecessarily long, it seems. I don't know why. Like, you can shut off the... you can shut off the AI turn, or being able to see the AI turns, which shortens the time a little bit, but it still has to process it, I guess, so it still takes a long time. Yeah, and I don't like the chaos in it. They seem... I think that they might be the worst faction. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like an excellent way to play them, but in the campaign they don't seem very good to me. The horde idea was very cool, but actually just that. Fire at will. You can choose your targets appropriately. Forward and ready to fire. I don't think I've used mortars effectively ever, so I'm hoping that this is a little better than how it usually goes. I have to sneeze and it's stuck. No, it's gone. Alrighty then. Now my eyes will just be watery for the next little bit. Alright, so we've hit a couple of their troops. They're moving around, it looks like, which is not a problem. I can move troops over if it seems that they're trying to flank my artillery. That being said, they might be trying to get out of range of my mortars just by going around the side. We're going to try and not let them do that. My howitzers haven't taken out any units at all. We'll switch targets, see if that helps a little bit. Hopefully we stop them from getting too close. I don't want to lose any troops to this for when I take Amsterdam. We've done a number on this hillside. Looks like our mortars are being quite effective. Taking out 12 units from there. This. For militia regiment. Oh, okay, so. And 2 units old rifle infantry. And they're running now, so what they're up. Well, I know what they're up to, but let's move our back line up a little bit. I don't think that they're going to get behind us, so, and they don't have any artillery, so I don't need to worry about bunching up. being a problem. We're gonna switch them straight up to the front. Try and make a wall. Move them there. Them there. And our mortars are still being fairly effective. Whereas our artillery is not. We are getting to the point where our infantry is going to be in range, so... Oh, and we have hit with our artillery. Not very effectively, but we have hit. Alright. And we're getting fairly close to being able to shoot their units. They are getting just close enough. All of our units are in guard mode, so they shouldn't chase them away. And now that they're in proper range, they're going to be getting hit by artillery and mortars and bullets. So this is good. And we've distracted them so that they're not going to be attacking our artillery and stuff. We are going to lose some units, it seems. We've lost two... Oh, we've lost a bunch of units. So we're going to just speed up. Cause them to run away. We need to improve our artillery. Otto Dick's German soldier explained why he outbreak. Oh, I missed the quote. Recruitment. Oh, I see. Workers are on strike and on slurring. Why? Why are they on strike? Sure. Do it that way. Lower the taxes just a little bit. Move our reinforcing unit up a little bit. Then, Eastern Front. Consolidate into one large unit. Research and technology. What are we doing next? That is bombing operations. That seems fair. Intellectual. Should be able to use. I think I know what it is. Okay, no. Work? No, it's... Move one of our agents. Going to that intellectual center. It'll take him a few turns, but he'll get there. And increase our research. I prefer this method of research to any of the other ones in any other game, I feel. Having to have universities is probably, I think, a bit better than just being able to magically research things when you don't necessarily have a place or funding to do so. I also like that you can sort of see where the trade routes are. Like you can see, like I can see into Spain because I'm trading with them, which makes sense because I would be able to get a little bit of information from my traders. What's France doing? more troops into the Champagne region. Oh, no, just reinforcing Paris? Ah, here it comes. I can hold them off until winter. That would be lovely. Bombing operation. Technology. Switzerland was destroyed. Italy has joined my enemies. Versus. I'm not surprised by any stretch of the imagination, but what are we gonna do? Well, first we're gonna resolve the Holland problem. I want them, I think, to be... Who do I want to be the reinforcements? Yes, I want them to be the reinforcements. They have the least advanced artillery. So they should be good. So assault. Hopefully they don't... I lost a battle issue. What happened with the battle? Not forget your dogs of war, your big guns, which are most to be respected arguments of great kings. Friedrich II, great king of... Friedrich II, the Great, king of Prussia. Okay. Now it always expects me to attack from that side, which we're going to do because they have quite a bit of cover. Ooh. Ooh. I'm not liking this terrain. Suppose we'll attack from this side. Ah, thank you. Oh, excuse me. Stuck in there for a while. Not entirely sure why the range is backwards, but it's not actual issue, just a problem with the just an error, I suppose. Right, our older infantry block. They don't have any artillery, so we don't really have to worry about that. But they do have quite a lot of guns. Our newer infantry is going to leave sort of an open path to our artillery. Try and make them make the bad mistake. Press the right buttons this time. And just like that. That. Slow as we do. There's 2 Skaven armies by turn 3 in Empire territory in all games. Never seen that. I've seen it a couple times, but never. What territories were they? Because if they were near Skaven Blight, I'm not surprised. Fire upon the center line. Where is their gym? Here's... Okay. That for now. There. And there. General very likely will be... Yeah, do it that way. Altdorf right... Oh, that's very strange.
Victory, sir, is soon to be yours.
I don't think I've ever seen I don't think I've ever had Skaven get to Reichland, so I'm not sure even how they got there, in all honesty. Oh right, our mortars don't have that long of range, so we're gonna want them to actually move pretty much right up there. And they can even run, so... Sorry, I have my webcam. Yeah, I think there might be a Skaven settlement in, like, those mountains where the dwarves are. But... yeah, it seems very strange that they managed to get a full unit in. I also don't like that the only way the game has managed to figure out how to make the game even for players is to have the game get more, like, actual cheats. Like, straight up. I don't know why they're just standing there, though. Seems odd. Whatever. I don't mind. Like, I'll take the easy win to take Amsterdam, but... what's their range? Is it good enough? That's good enough for them. So, move them there. And the other ones just sort of behind them in a more tight formation. I guess Skaven can use the Undercroft, but even then, like, it seems strange, to say the least. Alright, he's getting very close. Or they're getting very close, rather. Where they're going. Put them there. That seems like a good spot. They will be exterminated. Yeah. Skaven are not good to have anywhere. I think that their I think that their mechanics are very interesting. I think that how they actually play is less so. Swarm armies are cool, but I don't know. I don't see them being good. It's a bit like the problem with the vampire counts, rather. Because they just don't have range. I mean, Skaven do have range, but they don't have good range. Alright, so now I've got artillery firing on them from 2 different spaces. I'm pretty confident in my ability to win this without losing anyone now. Because that is my biggest anger-causing thing in this game. Losing units. It is... they do have some of the best war machines, and I won't disparage their war machines. It's more their units are easily susceptible to, you know, a half decent charge, which is unfortunate. Because they do have, like, the best looking units. I think that they're all really cool. I just feel that, you know, they're trying to figure out them tactics-wise is a challenge unto itself. Limber. I like to, yeah, well, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm just saying that they could be better. But I don't know. The Total Warhammer games, and that is actually what they're called, and don't try and convince me otherwise. They have a lot of issues. That could probably be really easily fixed. So it's kind of unfortunate how they're set up now. Improving chaos would be good, and having an actual Chaos Demons faction would be really nice, especially then because you would be able to, you know, actually choose between one of the 4 Chaos Gods. But I don't know if they'll do that. I doubt that in Warhammer 3 Total Warhammer 3 they'll do that, but I'm hoping at least for ogres in Total Warhammer 3. So I have no idea why they're just standing there. Does the game not know how to deal with double artillery fire, or? Whatever. Let's see if attacking their general causes something to change. Oh god. I mean, the impressively bad aim has stuck, which is not nice, but, you know, consistent. I think that the Bloody Hands wall is yeah, turning off cheats for AI is the first mod I install. I don't think I needed it in this, because they did make the AI actually fairly balanced, I guess would be a good way to say it. But I don't know. I think that they could have done a lot better. And we know that they can do better, because with Total War Shogun 2, you don't need mods. It's right out of the box, as it were. The game is fine. So, the fact that they did that with Total Warhammer, it's just strange to me. Firing on. These guys are firing on the retreating unit. Let them retreat. Seems like they're gonna have to move up a little bit. Straight up to there. I do think that if they did like a proper 40k Total War game, as I mentioned before, I think it would be really cool. But I feel that just because of how Games Workshop does their licensing, I think that it would be split up once again into a lot of different games. Like you would have one that has Eldar in them, and the rest. The same that they've done with Dawn of War. That's what it is. How you've got all these different games that have different factions in them. But I think if they just had one game where they had all of the factions, all of the races, everything like that, it would be really nice. And that I like that I feel like I made creative assembly is up to the task. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's been a lot of glitches in their new games. I guess you're right. It would be. I mean, it could also be a problem with Sega as well. Because Sega's business decisions are strange at the best of times. So. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the next Total Warhammer game. And then, because they did say it was going to be a trilogy, so I think we can at least trust them on that. I don't know how we're going to deal with Sega is learning from EA, and it's no good. Sega is learning from the fact that the business decisions of EA make sense, because people will pay not to play a game. If you catch my gist, the advent of microtransactions aren't so much an EA decision, so much as it's a decision based on the fact that it works. And it's more complicated than just EA wanting to make money. Oh shit. I forgot they had 2 units back there. Running? Hard to tell in that. Alright, I might actually have to hit play. Run! Run! Alright. We'll give them covering fire. Most people don't. Oh no, I'm not saying that it's a good decision. But it's a decision that people pay for. Like, it's an undeniable fact that people use microtransactions. You know, even with games like WoW, people use microtransactions. So it's not like, I'm not saying anything. There's no hot takes here. It's just microtransactions work. So people put them in their games. Like, the problem is more deep than just EA putting microtransactions in their game. It's consumers aren't always right, is kind of what I'm getting at. We say we want certain stuff, but we don't actually, because as soon as those things come in, we don't know how to adjust to them. So it's unfortunate, but microtransactions are here to stay. And pending, you know, the court case, and I haven't invested any money in them. I don't like people that do. I think they're just not in the game. Well, they are like that. The bottom line is Sega, EA, Ubisoft, all of them are in it to make money. So when I see someone like Penny Arcade or Jim Sterling or Angry Joe or like any of them saying, well, these companies are just destroying art. No, they're not. They're doing what they do. They're in it to make money, so they are going to use functions that they know will make them money. And that's why they're there. It's not because they hate art, it's because they have to be competitive. And I understand they make a shitload of money, but like it doesn't change the fact that they're going to try and make more money. Yeah. Like it's not, I'm not saying obviously that I like it. It's just that when I hear people saying, well, it's destroying games. No, it's just another part of games. The freemium model does make money, so it's here to stay. We know for a fact. So I don't know. The titles they've come up with are tired ideas. That's sort of true. The problem is really creative, out-of-the-box stuff doesn't make money. Like they would rather have a safe bet than take a gamble on something like Senua's Sacrifice. If Hellblade was like if EA wanted to make something like Hellblade, they wouldn't, because it's a gamble. You don't know if it's gonna pay off. So unfortunately, I don't think we'll get something like that from a AAA developer. It's only going to come from AA or lower funding, because they're willing to take that risk. Because when you don't have to when you're not risking millions of dollars on a title, you're able to make decisions. That's what you have to be careful with that, though. Indie developers can also be a massive problem. With indie developers, you get things. I'm not going to give any of the names of the titles because I don't want to give them publicity, but there was a point where there was literally a game about Nazi propaganda on Steam, and that was made by an indie developer. Digital Homicide were, I guess, indie developers. Same is true about, like, the problem is indie developers and less than AAA games don't have the same level of quality control, so you don't necessarily know if what you're getting is going to be not just good, but decent. I'm trying to find a good example of how, without mentioning the games, but when Jim Sterling got sued, and I'm like fully aware that I'm not a fan of his, it's still indicative of a larger problem that, indie devs don't have the same level of quality control or the necessary skills for being a game dev. And they aren't able to take criticism as well. I can't remember his name, but the guy who created Fez doesn't know how to deal with his publicity, and he never has. So rather than being able to take criticism, he's just a massive dick all the time. And there is that level of entitlement in some indie devs. Not all of them, obviously. Like, Hellblade is a good example of indie development done pretty much perfectly, I would argue. But at the same time, with indie devs, you don't get something like Warhammer 40k Ultramarine, which is a phenomenal game. So it's always a gamble with game development just as a whole. So there's always that aspect of it. It's another good example. Like video games. Yeah, but so are indie devs. The vast majority of indie games aren't Fez, and they aren't, they aren't as perfect and shiny as, like Battlefield 1 was essentially a World War II game reskin to be World War I, and I understand that. But, like, you don't get a Verdun or Hellblade or Fez from every indie dev. The vast majority are not that good, to put it bluntly. Like things like Battlefront's loot boxes is something that gets brought up very often. But that's not indicative of every. Well, that may be true. It comes to show that money and stuff shouldn't happen. Well, I mean, they're there to make money, and if they find a method of making money that is proven to work, they're going to use it. Plain and simple. I don't, expect EA to do something that their audience necessarily will like. And I understand why they make some of their decisions. And some of their decisions aren't even decisions per se. Like, loot boxes probably weren't the decision of the designer. It was very likely a bunch of shareholders who said, hey, this is proven to make a shitload of money, looking at Overwatch, and Overwatch is actually probably the best example of why loot boxes are still a thing. But the shareholder said, we want X amount off of this. And if you aren't going to do that, then we will find someone who will. It's unfortunate, but a lot of their decisions aren't things that they get to decide, per se. And it sucks. If you're a game dev, you should be able to make the game you want, so long as it makes back its budget. But it doesn't work that way, sadly. So, we don't get, the open world Star Wars game that was in development, because apparently not enough people are buying single player experiences. Because they've decided that X number of copies need to be sold, or else. That's why indie games seem to be more of a cure. Well, indie games are also in it to make money as well. Like, Verdun is an example I like to use, because it is an indie game essentially. It's just made by a bunch of guys who did a lot of research into World War I. They also initially came off and said there will never be an expansion to Verdun. Which is untrue if you look at their store page and notice it's not in the DLC section, it's an expansion. The same is true about the guys who originally released Payday, and it had to be bought by a AAA company to have loot boxes removed and DLC removed. So while there are indie devs who will use responsible business practices that focus on art, there's still just as many who are focusing on shady business practices, and obviously not everyone is a digital homicide, but there are way too many. And some of that is on Steam, some of it's on us, some of it is on them, but at the end of the day, indie games and AAA developers are... Anyone on the spectrum of funding is going to be influenced by the same business practices. They all need to make money. They all have a budget to make back. So all of them at some point are going to use business practices that are seen as shady or foreign. And like I said, it would be nice if we could have a Fez developed by someone who isn't a massive piece of shit, but it doesn't seem like we're going to get that. Just because of how the market is. Also may be true if just... Well, that's not entirely true. Because looking at something like... what's it called? Problem is, now that I've brought that up, I can't remember the name of the game that I was thinking of. I've blanked on the name, but there's a Kickstarter a while ago for a game that was made by two people. I'm not sure the circumstances surrounding it, but it didn't meet its goal. And essentially, like... The problem is, to make a decent amount of money and to have your name recognized enough so you can work on a project where you can make a living wage effectively, you need to work on a game that makes a lot of money. But if you have to do that through something like Kickstarter or the Steam's new version of Early Access, whatever it is now, you're stuck in a position of, well, do I make a game with my name on it and have to rush it a bit and, you know, it's have to rely on crowdsourcing for funding, or do I make a game on my own with no budget and have to kind of suck up the costs myself? And a lot of people choose the latter, and a lot of people on a Kickstarter will ask for their money back if they don't like what they see. And if, you know, people disagree with your decisions, it's not, they don't see it as you changing your mind on a, you know, minor issue. They'll see it as a stab in the back. And you'll be put in a position where you're either forced to lie or make a poor decision. No Man's Sky is kind of the best example of that, because people said, well, this, and this aren't going to be in it. Online multiplayer and stuff like that. And I think that Hello Games put themselves in a situation where they promised more than they wanted to, because that's what people seemed to. And I've heard that the game has improved a lot, which is good, obviously. But you're not always in a good position. I don't understand how that plays into, because what people say they want and what people want are very rarely the same thing. People want an MMO Star Wars. People wanted an MMO Star Wars game where you could make decisions similar, you know. Ooh, let me try that with syllables. People wanted an MMO Star Wars game that had lots of elements of what they said were, you know, moral choices and things like that. But you can't put that in an MMO. You know, it's hard to design exactly what people want and what people actually want. Verdun is a good example of trying to balance what people say they want and what people actually want, because you have to have a level of gameplay where it is appealing to a mass audience and appealing to the fanboys. Verdun tried to do that in a way that is admirable, but has its flaws. I'm going to get into a bit of a controversial point about history, Verdun has no women soldiers in it. This is a problem. Um, Verdun has no people of color in it. You are playing as a white soldier. Full stop. Um, and that is an issue because Indian regiments were in. So people say they want a game that is historically accurate. But what they mean by that is they want a game that appeals to their understanding of history. So if you want something and say you want it to be, let's say, completely historically accurate, you're going to be very disappointed by that. If you say you want a game that's accurate completely to Star Wars lore, for example, you're gonna be phenomenally disappointed because Star Wars lore is a train wreck. It's people say they want a lot of things when they mean they want nostalgia bait, essentially. And that's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. People say they want an open world game where they can explore whatever they want and they can do whatever they want. So, oh good lord, what's it called? It's like, I'm actually gonna just minimize this and check because trying to think of what it's called and I'm blanking on it. What is it? Elite Dangerous comes out. So Elite Dangerous is a game where you can play as, effectively whatever you want. You don't have to fire a single shot in that game. You can explore wherever you want. You can land on planets. It is definitely more hard-nosed in the fact that I enjoy history. I haven't seen it making it correct. Because a lot of people who say they want a game that's completely historically accurate actually mean something different. If you made a World War I game historically accurate, it would be probably terrible to play. So from a technical aspect, looking at it so that you have a game that is playable and interesting, you're not going to have it appeal to a mass audience. And that, at the end of the day, is what they need. That's not what I want to research at all. So, automatic weapons were just not common in the First World War. But you need those to appeal to enough people to make back at least your budget. So, it's a hard balance that isn't ever really done well. So, if you wanted, like, Verdun is probably as close as you're going to get to a completely historically accurate World War I game. You hated the fact that they're teaching a lot of people false history, which, I've lost my train of thought. So what, hated that who is teaching a false history? Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's... Battlefield 1 is probably a big reason why a lot of people don't understand World War I history, because a lot of people, particularly my age, get their history from historical video games. So, you know, when I see people running around with an automatic weapon in a World War I game, makes me very angry. When I hear people complaining that there was literally a video about this, and I can't remember who put it out, but they complained that there were too many black people in Battlefield World War I. Or Battlefield 1, I guess I should call it, since that's its name. Not realizing that's mostly who Battlefield, like World War I, was fought by. Because the British had to recruit from all over, like, their colonies. Because England is quite small. which is strange that I have to explain that to people from England. I love, yeah. I would recommend watching World War I in color. It is a hard watch, but I think everyone should watch it. On top of that, I think, trying to find some good examples. Yeah, there's some issues. Oh, okay, so you've seen it. I had to watch it for school, so I've watched it a couple times since then. But it comes to fair enough. It's an interesting watch, but I think Battlefield 1 is a good example of a game that is good to play, claims to be historically accurate, and to a certain degree is, but also has the problem of trying to appeal to a mass audience. So you need to appeal to the regular Battlefield crowd, first-person shooter crowd, and I'll call them the Call of Duty crowd. I know there's probably a nicer way to put it, but you want to appeal to people who aren't necessarily fully aware of World War I history. So, you still need a lot of people to buy your game, and if that means sacrificing some level of historical accuracy, they're gonna do that, even despite people saying they want historical accuracy. And Battlefield 1 was fairly positively received. So, I mean, I guess that's, people say, like, I know that there are some people who claim Battlefield 1 is historically accurate when it is demonstrably not. Yeah, it's a problem, but I don't know how you would fix it, to be honest. Because like I said, people claim they want certain things when they don't actually want those things. Sorry, the reason I was disbanding that unit is so that I could get a general next turn. And I think, so in a strange way, comparing, so I'm gonna be saying some very similar things to a extra credit video here. So if you haven't seen that, I would recommend checking out their channel. They do a lot of really cool stuff. So they mention at one point talking. Where's name? Their number. Go back to the DLC. But yeah, that's most Battlefield though. They Battlefield 1 takes a very specific type of player to play. Oh, sweet. Then you probably already know what I'm gonna say. So, I'll probably put, like, I'm gonna edit this video down and put it on YouTube, because I think, while what I'm saying is not new, I think it's important for more people out there to say it. They talk about, in an episode, hey, Portugal. The comparison between Wolfenstein and Call of Duty World War II. Now, I dislike Call of Duty for a number of reasons, but I won't get into those now. There we go. So they talk about the difference between addressing the actual fundamental root of how do I put this so that it doesn't get me looking like a right dick? They try and address the actual causes and actual problems that, like, actual things that happened during the Second World War. In Wolfenstein, they address the Holocaust. They address genocide. They address the homophobia. And while, you know, obviously, as Extra Life pointed out, they do kind of make it look like a caricature. They do have a character that borders on caricature. Whew, that is a hard sentence to say. But they do address it in a way that is respectful to, you know, what happened to the victims, and you know that you are looking at Nazism. Like in the first Wolfenstein game, you go through a concentration camp. You see people starving and dying. It's it's hard. That is a hard level for me to play. And it makes you really think that, no, I know that what I'm fighting are the bad guys. I know that what I am fighting is a demonstrably evil force that has no merit, no other no other reason to exist but to destroy and to kill. And I know that I have to beat these. I have to be the victor. And compared to Call of Duty World War or Call of Duty World War II, you go through a cleared out concentration camp. You fight enemies that shout racial slurs. You fight enemies that, while having the look of evil, don't actually do anything in game that would be considered, the same level as, same level of evil, I guess, as what it actually, what the Nazis actually were. Thing that was game. Well, I mean, Wolfenstein is meant to be a fantasy, but they, it's you're not looking at an accurate depiction of history, just by playing it. But you get a sense that your enemies are people you need to fight. You know that what you're fighting is a force that shouldn't feel remorse for fighting. That you shouldn't, feel bad for saying, no, these are the bad guys. And I agree with you, Forgotten Noble, that they do need to address problems that actually happen in the world of gaming. Like, I have a unique perspective on this, I've been told, where I think that, if you're creating what is effectively art, and video games are art, I'll show my hand on that argument here. You have a responsibility to say something. It's not enough to just make something, you have to say something on top of that. So when I see something like Call of Duty watering down history and making it seem more pleasant, particularly in reference to World War II, where the fight was very black and white. There was a clear line that one side was evil. And I will be the first to admit that, yeah, both, the Allies did some really shitty things, but they, there's a difference between the bombing of Japan and concentration camps. It's not like some people say when they're playing Call of Duty that both sides had merit. No, one side had merit and did shitty things. The other side was based around genocide. And Call of Duty could have came out and said, yeah, you will be fighting Nazis. They are the bad guys. This is not a controversial issue. And Wolfenstein did that, and that was their marketing campaign. And the PR director of Bethesda came out and said, yeah, if you have a problem with fighting Nazis, maybe you need to look at yourself. If you have a problem, like if you are supporting the villains in this game, then this is how you should be treated. It's not like, that's not what it was at all. It's not like, what's a good game that has, I guess it's not like any World War One. It's a piece. It's the ridiculous piece of culture. I'll just let that be known. That's how I see. Yeah. I don't know if you mean Windows culture or if you mean political correctness, but I mean, to a certain extent, yes. There are people who are needlessly offended, but at the same time, there's some people have every right to be offended. But particularly in reference to political correctness. So I'm gonna disagree with you on that. There's a problem in the U.S. specifically, though it is present in more places, where Switzerland trade with you feeling that you're far too sensitive. Yeah, there are people that get needlessly offended, as I said, but when you're saying that, yeah, it is acceptable to fight Nazis, and someone says, well, actually, whatever they say after the well, actually, it doesn't matter whether it is passive or active support for whatever they're for fascism. If you are passively supporting fascism, that is no different than actively supporting it. So when I hear someone complain that, well, you can't, when Wolfenstein should have given the Nazis a more sympathetic cause, they didn't have a sympathetic cause. Like, I don't understand why people complain about Wolfenstein's depiction of, you killing Nazis, because that's not really something that I see as bad. They're Nazis, to quote the Bethesda director of public relations. There was a video I saw, and it basically compared Wolfenstein's depiction of violence against Nazis as communism. And I don't know if the video was trying to be funny or sarcastic, but they seemed dead serious. And they were saying that, that you shouldn't be showing people fighting Nazis, which is I don't understand the mental gymnastics you would have to do to get to that point where you are saying you can't show violence against Nazis. And I guess my point with that is more so that Wolfenstein will actively address that, yeah, this is what the Nazis did, and this is why you were fighting them. Whereas something like Call of Duty will say, well, yeah, we'll allude to the Nazis doing something, but we won't actually show it. So it's an artistic choice that is, I don't want to say it's bad, because calling art bad is kind of a rabbit hole. But it's a choice that I think should be avoided. Lance is going, or going anywhere, better show the world before violence finds them. Yeah, to a certain degree. Violence against Nazis isn't something that should be a controversial thing to show. Both, in an how do I put this without sounding like a dick? In a nation that, like every nation in the world, has said, yeah, fascism was bad and it should be avoided. So the fact that people are now saying, and obviously this has been a problem not just in Europe for the last, we'll call it 40 years, that people are still, there are still Holocaust deniers, there are still fascist supporters, and there are still fascist rallies. To say, these are the people complaining about it. It's not regular people saying, well, I think the violence should be tamed down, or something like that. It's people saying that I'm uncomfortable with seeing what the Allies did to, or what this ideology actually did. So that was kind of a mess of words. So I hope I made my point clear. Better to have violence shown in video games than actual violence. Yeah. People don't have spine these days. Yeah, there's a lot of people who won't actively stand up for what they believe in. Like if you actively believe that the violence in video games is bad, it wouldn't be directing that towards something like Wolfenstein. And yeah, Wolfenstein has had a history of controversy starting from the first game. It's complaining that there's violence in Wolfenstein. I don't mean you're crazy or anything, but you need to know what happened. Yeah, like, I'm not saying, go out and hunt down Nazis with a chainsaw, as you do in some sections in Wolfenstein, but, like, be aware that the effects of Nazism are very real. Like, it's not like how Call of Duty depicts it as, this watered down, toned down. Well, the Nazis might have done something bad. It was the Nazis killed 10 million people in a mechanized killing machine because of their beliefs. It wasn't, an act of war. This was deliberately carried out in this way with the specific intent to destroy a race. It wasn't anything else. And to suggest that as certain YouTubers and news organizations, like I don't even know what to call them, to try and make them seem sympathetic is ignorant at best. So when something like COD, or I think COD's actually the only one that I know of that does it that poorly. Maybe Heroes and Allies, but I don't even know if that game's running anymore. How they don't even go there. World of Tanks, how they skip it entirely just to be a or third tank shooter. I don't know how you would classify that, but there are games that have not the agenda to water down history and make it seem better than it actually was, but they don't want to talk about it, despite them setting a game in that time period where not talking about it isn't an option. I'm gonna actually do it. Like if you set, I feel like the swastika should, I feel that the swastika should be seen in games held by those who hold the flag. Yes and no. There is a problem with that in that, so I have to kind of discuss how Germany's laws regarding that work. Only certain things are allowed to do that. You have to have certain levels of education to even discuss that. And so in North America, I think that, or I guess the Americas would be a better way to put that. There isn't a problem with seeing Nazis holding swastikas. But what, is it Activision that does? Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of the company that runs, we'll say it's Activision for hopes and dreams, and hoping I'm right. With Call of Duty, they wanted to make it so they could just run all of the online stuff on one server. So they just took it out of the online aspect of the game. And, it made sense from a business standpoint for them to do it that way, but from every other aspect, it seemed like a mistake. So, Also, that law was put in shortly after World War II. That's not by any stretch of the imagination a new law. Not in Germany, they didn't. It's pretty much always been since the end of the Second World War that you just couldn't have anything not in an artistic merit have the swastika in it. And because video games, when video games, like, they're not considered art all over the world, like they're not even considered art in Canada or the US. They are by select groups of people, but not I know what you mean. I'm just but when there's like I'm trying to be very careful in what I say because I would really rather not have someone who is in support of like proper fascism find this video and then send me death threats, because I get enough of those as it is. But like when blatantly shun. I mean, it wasn't just blatantly shun to have an in-game showing Nazis. Well, that's the thing. It's not like it's not. It is the people who are in support of them. I do. It's truly wonderful. I posted an essay like 2 years ago, and it was about my school and how poor things were, and I had people, and still do, from that school sending me death threats. I don't know who it is. It's the same email. I won't block it because I know they won't do anything, but it is what it is. But like when people complain that, you know, the swastika toting bad guys are portrayed as, you know, swastika toting bad guys, they get upset. It's not usually the people calling for equality, if you get my drift. And when politicians are saying, well, we can't have children exposed to this. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. I don't know who it was, and I don't know who found it, but they're like, people are dumb and shouldn't be allowed access to the internet. Excluding you, of course. Present company excluded. But like the people complaining that swastikas are in video games are generally not the people who are also saying that. No, it's not people complaining. It's not people petitioning for equal rights. That's the word I'm looking for. It is generally people who are either in support of or trying to make it seem more that ideology seem more sympathetic. More often than not. Sometimes it is just, you know, people who unopened seem like it's super helpful. Diesel engines. All right. Oh, I need to press the right button. There, oh, no, not these guys. Them. Transfer. Can I not do basic math? No, I can't do basic math. And people a lot of crazy. Well, people do say a lot of crazy things. So there's. I'm fairly confident that everyone's heard of this, so I'm, you know, not gonna lose any sleep over mentioning them. There's a newspaper in that's not the word for it. There's a propaganda machine in Canada called Rebel Media, which spews out a lot of neo-Nazi propaganda and actual Nazi propaganda. Funny enough, not funny enough. Actually, this isn't really something that I want to joke about. But they once ran a piece called "Analyzing Germany's Response to the Jewish Question." Now, in most cases, I would get super pissed off about this, but I wasn't actually surprised that they did. I was surprised that a politician in Alberta, where I'm from, was citing them as a source. Yeah, most people have heard of them. Very seldom in a positive context, because there isn't very much positive about them. They run, spread essentially the same, whoops, frames dropped there. They run actual Nazi propaganda. Like, the Jewish question isn't like it's not a quiz. It is what people say to justify anti-Semitism, and what the Nazis just used to justify genocide. So when I see a politician in my home province sharing that, I get a little concerned, obviously. But apparently that just went over the heads of a lot of people because they didn't, they wrote an apology, a half-hearted apology letter, and no one brought it up again. And apparently it's acceptable for politicians running for premier to use them as a source. They spread the same conspiracy theories about things like cultural Marxism, which is literally invented by actual Nazis during the Second World War. And no one seemed to have a problem with that. So, I don't know what you have to do to be considered just a hate-spewing machine, and no longer be considered media, or news, not media. Everything's media. But apparently it's a lot. Well, yeah, like any authoritarian ideology that actively imposes attacks on things like free speech, and I mean actual free speech, not people considering the right to pay someone to hold up a sign that says "Death to Jews." Looking at you, PewDiePie. Fucker. But when people say, well, what? Yeah, like no, this is where I start blasting communist propaganda. No, the problem is that there are a lot of people who are coming out and emboldening. PewDiePie is kind of an idiot, and he deserves the flack that he gets 90% of the time. I understand you're not a Nazi, Felix. Please don't sue me. But like when like there are people who are using ironic racism and ironic Nazism to justify actual Nazism and actual racism. Like Richard Spencer is happy for people like Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, I guess his name is, and Count Dankula, that's his name. Like he's very lucky that people do his work for him, despite him not having enough for legal fees and having his website taken off the internet, which is truly wonderful. But they had more than one pillory emplacement. Like I was wrong. We'll only have one cannon firing at them, and switch to there. I think he has more sense than a lot of YouTubers. He has a lot of business sense. I would maybe give him less common sense. He did, after all, pay someone in India to hold up a sign that says, "Death to all Jews." So, I don't understand why people are like, well, look, he's very smart. Really not. He's abusing a system which... There's the other. Enables people to take advantage of and put people into states of extreme poverty where they're willing to do something. So, there's my view on that. Well, Logan Paul and Felix are two sides of the same coin, effectively. Like, I'm just gonna call him Felix because that's his name. Like, Logan Paul isn't, just a terrible person all around. But he's using the same tactics that PewDiePie used originally. He's clickbait titles and then doing something that's considered outrageous. He's just doing it more. And he still has millions of subscribers, and he still makes a lot of money. Not from, you know, obviously his videos have been demonetized, thank goodness, but, like, he's still doing the same tactics. Like, CinemaSins is an excellent example of how to use clickbait and get, you know, get paid. Yeah, we'll move it aside. And there's a problem with YouTube at large, just the whole system is broken. In favor of, to some extent, advertisers, but it also can very easily be... I know of Gavin McInnes. I would assume this is the, oh, Jesus, what's his name? I think I know who you're talking about. What's your... Is this the Miracle of Sound person? If not, then no, I don't know who Gavin McInnes is. I'm thinking it is either one of the... Yeah, no, I don't know who that is, unfortunately. Okay. Oh, they are running. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I know who that is. Actually, let me do a quick Google of that. I guess I can close my Twitch app. I have about 1 million notifications. Jesus. Gavin McInnes is a massive racist. I didn't know his first name. I only knew his last name. I do have some strong opinions on Mr. McInnes. In that he once dressed up in a stereotypical I don't even know what you would call what he dressed up as to spew out some horrible shit about things he didn't have all the information for. He was also one of the people who spread the conspiracy theory about the Quebec mosque shooter, claiming that he was a terrorist and a refugee, despite him being a Quebec-born... I mean, he still was a terrorist, but... I know that I don't want our relationship to take a dive, so like... No, I'm not... Like, I'm happy to have viewers, and I'm happy to, you know, discuss things. It's just Gavin McInnes is quite provably and sometimes by his own admission a racist. Like, he is aware that what he's doing in some cases, like dressing up in brownface to spew racist content about how refugees are coming into Canada and, you know, attack people is disgusting, in all honesty. And Google politely refers to him as a Canadian writer, but that disparages actual Canadian writers who do actual, honest journalism. Because what he does isn't journalism, it's effectively propaganda. And I'm not going to insult you for watching his content, but I just want you to be aware that, he is part of the problem, not the solution to a lot of issues. Well, I mean, Canada has the toughest screening process. Sorry, I was trying to figure out where that guy was. Toughest screening process in the world for refugees. There has not been a terrorist attack done by a refugee in Canada, full stop. And there are some people who say, well, this, like, they come and do crimes, which, statistically speaking, no. I honestly, off the top of my head, can't think of a country where they have France, Sweden. So I know exactly what you're talking about with Germany. The XY Einzelfall map has been disproven thousands of times by people a lot smarter than me. In terms of Sweden, the crime rate didn't actually go up. What they did was expanded their broad definition of sexual assault and assault, which they do basically every year at this point. On top of that, France, their terrorist attacks that were carried out were not done by refugees, but by legal citizens. So, to suggest that refugees are somehow at fault for a lot of these atrocities would be reductive at best.
Glorious victory, sir, is soon to be yours.
And Sweden has always had, their crime rates aren't comparable to other countries because they measure crime differently. Like, in terms of kidnapping, I don't want to sound like an ass, but when people use their personal experiences, I generally ignore them. They're not, it's not accurate to statistics. So when people say that it's bad to bring in refugees, it's demonstrably untrue. They don't, well, so Syria is currently being bombed by the US and Canada. Central and South Africa, or Central and Central North Africa, are currently in the midst of fighting various disease outbreaks. In terms of in Canada and the US with Central American refugees, government corruption is a huge problem. And you can't focus on fixing your own country while you are being bombed by different countries. The fact that there are currently 3 different alliances fighting over Syria is kind of proof, if proof were needed, that the situation there is more complicated than people fixing their own country. You can't expect people to be able to fight that off. when there's evidence that a dictator currently is using. What about before all this started? If a dictator throws a coup and takes over, it's very difficult to fix that. Refugees have been coming to various parts of the world for hundreds of years. Like 700 years ago, Romani refugees came from India. So to say that this is a new phenomenon isn't accurate or true. Oops. Well, I mean, so in relation to a lot of places in the Middle East, the aftermath of World War I is quite directly at fault for the current situation, being that England, France, Canada to a certain extent, and the US split it up. They just divided new borders. And some countries resisted, obviously, and it's commendable that they did, but it's hard to fight against a colonial power when that colonial power has tanks and you don't. Specifically with relation to Iran, when the US backed a coup, you can't fight against that necessarily. And there's some historical evidence that the West hasn't always been the best friend to places like the Middle East, Africa, Central America, South America, and Asia. And I'm not justifying them, fighting or doing terrorist activities, but to say that, well, why don't they fix their own country, ignores the fact that we helped destabilize their country. So we do have a certain level of responsibility in trying to take care of themselves. Well, they try to, though. If you look at the in both World War I and World War II, how the UK's interventionism in the Middle East led to various religious organizations taking control of governments. I mean, squabble. That's partly because of colonialism. There are certain countries in Africa, like South Sudan, is less than 10 years old. The impact of religious interventionism through, the Catholic Church or England in those regions is quite provably at fault for a lot of the problems. Not all of them, obviously, but they can't necessarily take care of themselves when they are either being bombed or having their riches stolen from them. There are companies that are using specifically in relation to the genocide in Sudan, it was preached from the podium. The government was at the time being backed by the US. Same with Batista in Cuba. He was being he was a US puppet dictator. He was installed by the US. So there's going to be resistance and dislike of the US as a result of that. People didn't sometimes, but it had these things as the well. So I hate to be that guy, but either you can say they need to take care of themselves or justify colonialism. You can't do both. suggesting that colonialism is okay and then saying but they don't take care of themselves is, like, once again requiring mental gymnastics that I don't think I could do. Because, like, it is because of these. It's a case to case. It's really not, though. When a foreign government is actively in your country taking resources, for example, in when it was called French Africa or the Spanish Sahara, like, the Congo is the way it is because of Belgium, because of the genocide that King Leopold put on the Congolese. Like, the to suggest that people in the Congo need to get their act together ignores hundreds of years of genocide. It ignores the slave trade to say that Africa needs to get its stuff together. It ignores colonialism. It ignores all of these problems that were caused by the West. If you haven't read it, read Guns, Germs, and Steel. It kind of goes into a lot of the reasons why certain countries are not developed. And the Cold War did actually play a bigger part in that than a lot of people seem to think. Dividing the world between the first, second, and third world along quite often racial barriers. I need to turn these off. Did definitely have a problem because certain trade embargoes were put in place on countries that were either not allied with one or both of the Soviet Union. So, it's difficult to say that these problems are fixable. Full stop. Like, there's a lot that can be done to mend what's happened, but I don't think we could easily fix anything. And I don't, like, some problems just can't be fixed. North and South Sudan will probably never be one country. So.
Meine Männer werden leiden, wenn wir hier lagern.
Her flag changed. That worries me. That changed. Oh, never mind. It must have had a revolution in the capital. All right, now moving back into the Champagne region. That's going to cause me some issues. I think at this, not sure if French were double check that. Oh God. Come on. Oh, please don't crash. Very upset if it did. Vacuum. The problem was it's a little more complicated than there was a vacuum. Considering that we did back, a democratically elected government. Actually, just turn slightly and switch to the IRL. When we left a government that was supposed to be democratically elected. We did also leave a lot of people very pissed off at both the U.S., Canada, like the West in general, and we left a region that was religiously motivated to a degree that was unsafe for military. Yeah, the thing is, we can't fight a nation that we're not at war with. Like, there's international law against that. We can't have soldiers fighting people that they suspect of crimes. That's why the Geneva Convention was set up, and we can't have suspected terrorists be. Well, I mean, we shouldn't have suspected terrorists being detained. We shouldn't have like, we shouldn't be locking people up without trial, and we can't we can't redo colonialism. We have to let nations try and figure themselves out, and unfortunately that does mean we have to have some degree of uncertainty. We can't just try and take over a nation and say, well, we have to wait until all of the militants are gone, because that will just inspire more militants, because at that point we're just a colonial power. So to say that we could have dealt with them, eliminated the threat before it grew, is obviously reductionist. And I know I've said that a lot, but like, it's not something that we can really deal with. We can't eliminate all threats in that sense. Those threats are there kind of so long as these situations are still there. So there's, I don't like recommend. Well, I agree. If it caused 9/11, can't let those. Well, we haven't had a 9/11 incident. We had one, and that was like those ideologies don't sprout from nowhere. They come from either attacks on what people perceive to be attacks on their identity, or what they perceive to be attacks on their way of life, their culture, whatever. So if people are viewing a country as, and I'm not supporting them obviously, but if they're viewing a country as a external threat or hostile to them, then absolutely. But the difference between something like the terrorists in the Middle East, and I'm not going to use the name that they've given themselves. I'm not going to validate them with that. But with the Nazis, it's a little different in that they were an elected, like a democratically elected power who further seized power through legal means. Foreign intervention at that point, like Chamberlain shouldn't have appeased Hitler, obviously, but you can't invade a country. It is different, like with Chamberlain appeasing Hitler and France trying to create a border guard in, what about Poland? Poland was the offset of the war. Like, their invasion of Poland and France were both illegal, which is why allies got involved. So the difference between a terrorist attack and a terrorist organization is that they're not a nation. They're not something you can invade and try and take over because of their hostile aggression. Whereas, like, well, no, like, the U.S. was aiding the Allies by selling them weapons and the Lend-Lease agreement. If ISIS is not a nation state, while they have strongholds, they're not a country. Hello, new viewer. We're apparently talking about politics. ISIS is a nation in the same way that Catholicism is a nation. They don't have a country you can invade. They have strongholds, and they're trying to take over a nation state. So it's different than invading an established country that has citizens and like a central government and cities. It's like there is fighting on their strongholds by the countries that they are trying to occupy, but it's not the same as trying to invade a country. I just have to quickly change my it. But that's the same. Like that's true with every terrorist organization. Like every organization has a set of leaders. Like by your definition, I'll use Catholicism again. They should be. I guess actually Catholicism is probably not the best example. But Orthodox. Orthodoxy, Christian Orthodoxy would be by your definition a nation state because they have a government. Essentially, they have a leader who acts essentially as a dictator. Like to they are in a sense a like they're a nation, but they're not a nation state. They're not a country that can be invaded. They're an organization that can operate without a nation. They don't need territory. They can operate on the move, and they did in their early inception. And I'm not saying that they should be fought. They are a terrorist organization. But you can't invade a terrorist organization. It's not the same as fighting it's not the same as fighting the Second World War. It's not the same as fighting the First World War. It's very different. And that is it would be more similar to fighting in the sense that they are fighting terrorist strongholds, yes. But it's not that they're invading a nation, they're fighting what are effectively camps. It's not a nation state. So that's the key difference. I'm not saying that it's not working. I'm not saying that it's, how do I explain this a bit better? Well, yes, they are a nation. They're not a nation state. That's what my point was. They're not. Here we go. It's not like we're fighting a country that can, like, when the news ran, I think it was Fox and CNN that ran a discussion or a piece that they had their own currency. It doesn't matter. Like they're an organization, not a country. That was my whole point. If that makes sense. So that was what I meant by the difference between fighting now versus fighting World War II, because it's not comparable. And on that hot take, I should probably end the stream, grab some food. I will talk to you guys later. Thank you for stopping in. as per usual, thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next time.